He was often dubbed the most polarizing player in the 2000s. You either loved him or hated him. When there are haters, criticisms will be thrown your way. Some are fair, while others are simply out of line. The most popular ones include that Shaq carried him for his first 3 titles. He's been criticized for only winning 1 MVP. He was a ball hog, and that he wasn't an efficient scorer. By using statistics and a bit of logic, I can prove without a doubt that all of these are false. Let's start with the first one. Do we ever say that Jerry West was carried by Wilt Chamberlain when he won the only title of his career? Do we say that Magic Johnson got carried by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he won his first 3 titles? And do we ever say that Steph Curry got carried by Kevin Durant when they won back-to-back titles? We all know the answer to these questions. It never gets said, because all of those players were considered to be equals. But for some odd reason, Kobe's biggest detractors make the ridiculous claim that he got carried by Shaq for the first 3 titles that he won. He gets put in the same boat as players such as Scottie Pippen, Kevin McHale, or Klay Thompson. Players where we can say that they got carried by a superior player. I don't know about you, but there's something wrong with that picture. I'm here to give you the facts of the matter and to prove with numbers that the notion that Kobe got carried is an absolute myth. Let's first talk about why it's so hard for a team's second scoring option to play as one of the top 5 players in the league. If you look throughout the history of the NBA, we rarely see a team that has 2 other players that are legitimate MVP candidates. It's hard to explain. It could be due to the fact that it's hard for players and coaches to manage which and when the players will get their touches. It can also be that the star players don't know when to take over the game for fear of stepping on anyone's toes. Or it could be that the whole tactic of, here, I just shot the ball, now it's your turn to shoot approach, is too predictable. The offense becomes stagnant and it's easier for the opposing team to defend. If you don't have the right coach and system in place, it can be easy for teams with a lot of talent to underachieve. The reality is that there are few players that can strive in that role. It's not for everybody. That's why there have only been 4 teams that have won the championship since 2000 that had 2 players that got selected to at least the All-NBA second team. Those teams were the 2001 Lakers, the 2002 Lakers, the 2017 Warriors, and the 2020 Lakers. Notice that Kobe and Shaq accomplished that twice out of the 4 examples. Then we have this next stat. There have only been 7 different pairs of teammates since 2000 that have averaged at least 25 points per game in the same season, and they were qualified to receive the scoring title due to the number of games they played that year. Here's a list of teammates that have accomplished this. Notice that when it works, your team is going to have an enormous amount of success. 4 of those seasons ended with a championship, and 2 of those seasons came from the Kobe Shaq Lakers. Then 3 of those seasons ended with the team reaching the finals. Only 1 of those seasons, the 2008 Denver Nuggets, got bounced from the first round. You may also notice that the duo of LeBron and Wade only accomplished that once, or that the other great duos of the NBA that include Durant and Westbrook, Curry and Thompson, Westbrook and Paul George, Kawhi and Paul George, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, or Paul Pierce and Antoine Walker never accomplished that. Now, did you notice that out of the 10 examples that we displayed, Shaq and Kobe were able to average that many points for 3 straight seasons? Let's try to put that in perspective. In the history of the NBA, only Elgin Baylor and Jerry West were able to surpass the number of times that Shaq and Kobe averaged at least 25 points per game for a season. So the numbers tell us that in the modern NBA, Kobe is the greatest player to ever be considered the co-star of a team. But now let's talk about the postseason numbers. Here are the number of times that Kobe averaged more points than Shaq in a playoff series between 2000 to 2004. That is 8 of the 18 playoff series that they participated in. So nearly half the time, you can count on Kobe to score more than Shaq did in the playoffs. And if you notice in their 2001 series against the Kings, they both averaged over 30 points per game. That is the only time since the 60s that a pair of teammates averaged over 30 points for a playoff series. Now let's go to the next graphic and see the number of times that a pair of teammates averaged over 25 points for the playoffs while winning the title. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the list throughout NBA history. Notice that they are the closest duo to ever average over 30 points per game while winning the title. The facts are just overwhelming at this point. So the real question is, why would anyone in their right mind claim that Kobe got carried? The reason is for how dominant Shaq was in the finals compared to how Kobe performed. That was especially the case when you see their averages for the 2000 finals. Shaq averaged nearly 40 points, and Kobe averaged 15 points on 36% shooting. That is a huge difference there. But for some reason, we just push aside the important detail that Kobe suffered an ankle sprain in Game 2 after scoring only 2 points in the first quarter when the injury occurred. He then missed Game 3, he played brilliantly in Game 4, and then he couldn't find the basket for the following 2 games. Why was that? Could it be that the injury was affecting his game dramatically? Or was the defensive tandem of Mark Jackson and Reggie Miller just too much for him to handle? Let's not forget that he was averaging 23 points per game on 46% shooting for the first 3 rounds of the playoffs. And according to Fox Sports, Kobe mentioned that it was the worst sprained ankle of his career. For the player that is known to play through tough injuries, we shouldn't take those words lightly. Then for the finals in 2001 and 2002, Shaq was clearly the better performer against the New Jersey Nets that had no chance of beating the Lakers, and the one-man show that the Philadelphia 76ers were. There's no argument there. But here's the question. Do we make such a big deal knowing that Kobe was clearly the better performer in the 2001 conference finals against the best team in the league, the San Antonio Spurs? What about the 2002 semifinals against the Spurs that had the same record as LA? Shaq averaged 21.4 points on 44% shooting, while Kobe averaged 26.2 points on 45% shooting. Why don't we make a bigger deal of Kobe being the best player on the team against the more superior Western Conference opponents? Understandably, Shaq performing like that on the biggest stage should hold a little more weight. But none of that means that the dynasty of the Los Angeles Lakers was carried by Shaquille O'Neal, unless you want to ignore all the numbers that say otherwise. It's just as Shaq has said numerous times, we will always go down in history as the most enigmatic, controversial, dominant 1-2 punch ever created. After what we've considered, he's telling the absolute truth. The numbers and the hardware back it up. They might not be the most accomplished duo, but they are the most dominant. And they both needed to be great in order for them to three-peat, which is something that we haven't seen in over 2 decades and counting. Are we really saying that Kobe was a one-dimensional player? That all he could do was score? That couldn't be farther from the truth. Instead of trusting in trolls, we should trust in the numbers and what our eyes tell us. If you actually watch the games, you'll quickly realize that he was a talented playmaker. He knew how to get his teammates in the right spots and to create easy shots for them. In fact, Phil Jackson trusted him to be their primary playmaker. During his time there, from 2000 to 2011, he was a team leader in assists every year except 2. Was he averaging between 8 to 10 assists a game as other great playmakers have? No, because that wasn't his style. He was cut from the same cloth as Michael Jordan. Their biggest strength was scoring, and that's what they looked to do. But this goes beyond their stylistic preference. Phil Jackson would not allow them to average 30 points and 10 assists per game. Unlike players such as Luka Doncic, LeBron James, or James Harden, the triangle offense does not allow players to make every conceivable decision for their team. The whole point of the system is to get the ball moving, for the ball to touch a variety of players. Everyone needs to be involved. It's no accident that Phil Jackson has never coached a true point guard. Therefore, it would be foolish to expect Kobe to get double-digit assists every single game. But that also doesn't mean that he didn't make his mark in this aspect. For example, Kobe racked up the 12th most assists for the 2000s, and is the most by any non-point guard. So if Kobe is a ball hawk, then that means every single player that's behind him is also a ball hawk. But we all know that's not the case. Yes, Kobe did shoot a lot, but he also made sure to get his teammates involved. There's another statistic that proves this. There have been 7 times that he averaged over 27 points and 5 assists per game for a season. That's the same number of times as Michael Jordan and Giannis. Only 2 other players in league history have done it more times. It's Oscar Robertson, who has done it 8 times, and LeBron James, who has done it 12 times. The numbers clearly indicate that among volume scorers, he is one of the best all-around players. I mean, shouldn't it mean something that he's currently 4th all-time among shooting guards in career triple-doubles? Let's stop with this notion that Kobe only wanted to score. He excelled in every single aspect of the game. People look at Kobe's field goal percentage and say that his greatness is diminished because he wasn't a quote-unquote efficient scorer. There are many problems with this line of thinking. The first major one is that they often compare his shooting numbers to Michael Jordan's. That is an impossible standard to live up to. You aren't going to find many perimeter players in NBA history who scored as many times as Jordan did while averaging over 50% from the field. He's considered the GOAT for a reason. The next factor to consider is the era that Kobe played in. He had the misfortune of playing in the toughest defensive era, especially for perimeter players. For example, did you know that there were only 9 times that a shooting guard averaged over 50% from the field between 2000 to 2013? Just for comparison, it happened 23 times in the 90s, and it happened 51 times in the 80s, according to StatHead. It was a much different time in the 2000s. The defensive intensity was extremely tough. There were always 2 big men guarding the paint, which made it much tougher to slash to the rim. Teams were not spacing the floor as they do now. We cannot compare what Kobe was doing to any other era. We need to judge him according to what his contemporaries were doing. Here's what the numbers say. There were 6 times between 1999 and 2013 that Kobe finished in the top 5 among starting shooting guards in field goal percentage. In 2001, he finished 2nd behind Ray Allen. You know, the player that many consider is one of the greatest shooters of all time. But that argument is dead in the water if we only look at his field goal percentage. Did you know that out of the 18 seasons that Ray Allen played, Kobe averaged a higher field goal percentage in 8 seasons? There's another season where they had the exact same percentage. In other words, Kobe was more efficient than Ray Allen half the time. I'm sure there are many people listening who are saying that Ray Allen's case is different. He shot many more 3-pointers, which bumps his field goal percentage down. And that's fair. I agree with that premise. But what would you say is the more difficult shot? A player running through screens to get an open 3-pointer, or Kobe making these highly contested mid-range jumpers? No one is saying that Kobe is a better shooter than Ray Allen. All I'm trying to do is offer perspective. If no one penalizes Ray Allen for not averaging over 50% for the field, then why are we doing this for Kobe? The fact that he was one of the most efficient players at his position while consistently converting on difficult shots is very impressive. But the field goal percentage isn't the only thing that we can look at. Let's take a look at his true shooting percentage. There were 8 times that Kobe averaged over 25 points per game and had a 55 true shooting percentage. Since 2000, only Kevin Durant and LeBron James have done it more times. The numbers say that Kobe was consistently one of the most efficient volume scorers of his time. Was he at Michael Jordan's level? No. But who is? If we take into consideration the style of play from his era, we can come to the logical conclusion that Kobe was easily one of the most efficient volume scorers ever. We can only imagine what he would have accomplished if he played in the more offensive-friendly eras that occurred before and after his time.
MVPs regular season. LeBron James 4. Kobe Bryant 1.
He got 2, I got 1, Kobe got 1, something wrong with that picture.
Steve Nash was hit statistically at the numbers, but Kobe was still
Kobe, you only won 1 MVP award.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because the media votes on it. But that being said, does it bother me? Yeah, it bothers me. Of course it bothers me.
But the other guy you mentioned, the idea that Kobe Bryant even gets to be in this discussion is laughable.
Kobe Bryant's career resume is nearly flawless. However, there's one blemish that causes many people to believe that he shouldn't be allowed in the GOAT conversation, and it's the fact that he's only won one MVP award, that he was only the best player in the world for maybe 1 year. But winning the MVP doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best player in the league that season. There's a certain criteria that you have to meet in order to be eligible for the most prestigious individual award in basketball. There's also a narrative that Major League voters take into consideration. There are many players who benefited greatly from that criteria, but no one was a bigger victim than Kobe Bryant. But first, what is exactly this criteria or narrative for the MVP? The answer is in the name itself. What kind of value do you bring to the team? One of the biggest factors that league voters look at is the team record. You have to win a certain number of games in order to be seriously considered for this award. Did you know that 88% of the MVP winners since 1960 came from teams that won over 50 games? If you're not one of the top teams in the league, you have to be doing something historic if you want a chance at winning the MVP. This is something that league voters have been less strict about in the past few years, but during Kobe's era, it was almost an unwritten rule that you had to win at least 50 games. From 1990 to 2016, all 27 MVP winners came from teams that won over 50 games. With that mentality, the league voters were never going to take seriously what Kobe was accomplishing during his best individual years. In 2006 and 2007, he was surrounded by very little talent. It was going to be extremely tough for him to get the team success needed to sway the voters. That's especially the case when he was playing in a much tougher conference. The San Antonio Spurs, Dallas Mavericks, and Phoenix Suns each won over 60 games during those 2 years. Imagine having to play those teams with that roster 12 times a year. For Kobe to drag the Lakers to the playoffs was extremely impressive. Without him, they would easily be one of the worst teams in the league. You can make the case that no one was bringing more value to their teams than Kobe was. However, the league voters were disregarding the context surrounding each team. The talent and depth of the Lakers simply couldn't compare to what the Phoenix Suns and Dallas Mavericks had. To make matters worse, the 2007 Lakers experienced a lot of injuries to their already depleted roster. Their second best player, Lamar Odom, missed 26 games. Kwame Brown missed half of the season. Luke Walton missed 22 games. 3 other starters missed a large chunk of games, which made the Lakers an even bigger one-man show. But that didn't stop Kobe from breaking one record after another. For those 2 seasons, he had one 80-point game, 3 60-point games, 12 50-point games, and 29 40-point games. He was beating teams by himself during a time when defense was more prevalent. There's no question that he was the best individual player in the league. He could have been the exception to the rule as other players had, but he lost the MVP to players whose numbers weren't even close to Kobe's. All that mattered in the end was the wins. But even when you meet these criteria, there are other factors that they look at. For instance, what kind of talent you're surrounded with. If you're playing alongside an all-time great player, then you're almost disqualified from winning this award. When your team wins a lot of games, the media will say, well, what did you expect? He was playing with such and such. That's what the media was doing to both Shaq and Kobe after winning their first title. I wouldn't argue against anyone who says that Shaq was the best player for the Lakers in 2001 and 2002. I believe that is factual. But in 2003, there was a change. Shaq was not present for the first part of the season because he wanted to recover from an injury on company time. Let's not forget that many of their most important role players were old and tired from the last 3 title runs. But Kobe put the team on his back. This was a year where he averaged over 40 points per game for a calendar month and was the first to do so since Wilt Chamberlain. He even scored 40 points in 9 straight games. He averaged more points than Shaq that season. But the context of that year didn't matter. There was a certain mentality that the media had towards him. This is what he said to the court with A-Rod and Big Cat.
But I got to a point in my career where it was the rumblings, and some of it created by him, that Kobe can't win without me. And it was like, hold up. No, it's not true.
Right.
It's not true.
Right.
And I'm not going to retire and have people hold that over my head.
Shaq and the media claimed that Kobe couldn't win without him. As great as his numbers were, as impressive as all the never before seen moves that he was doing, he could only go so far without the big fella. How could he be the most valuable player in the league if he wasn't even the most valuable player on his team? This narrative was going to prevent him from ever being considered the MVP. And people wondered why he wanted to play without Shaq. It's because he wanted to prove that this stigma was completely false. In the following years, he proved emphatically that he was the best player in the world, and it was a title that he held for the rest of that decade. The unfortunate thing is that there isn't anything that the league offers that awards that. Without the MVPs, there isn't anything that we can point to that proves that no one was better individually than Kobe. But we do have the testimonials from players and coaches who was there to witness what he was doing. Take what Mike D'Antoni said during the 2006 season when everyone was debating if the MVP should go to his star player, Steve Nash, or Kobe. Quote, "I'm not saying that he's the most valuable player, but he's certainly the best player, and is not even close. He is utterly dominant." End of quote. If the coach of the MVP is saying that, then what more can be said? No one was questioning his individual greatness. It was obvious that he was on another level. In that same Sports Illustrated article, Clippers coach Mike Dunleavy was even saying that Kobe was better than Michael Jordan ever was from a talent standpoint. But everyone knew what the criteria was, and his team situation wasn't going to allow him to win the MVP. Then LeBron James broke into the scene, and the supposed debate was about who was the best player in the world. It was an entertaining debate, but there was no question who ran the league. Take Grant Hill, who made this interesting observation to Sports Illustrated back in 2010. Quote, "LeBron has a pull-up jumper and he takes it to the rim. He has 2 pitches, and trust me, both of them are great. But Kobe is like the guy with all the pitches. He brings the fastball, his changeup, and he gives you something on the corner. LeBron will overpower you, but you might know what's coming. With Kobe, you're never comfortable." End of quote. Players and coaches alike knew the answer to this question. The debate was more for media talking heads. It's no secret that the media always had a love-hate relationship with Kobe. But there were some honest sports writers who viewed things the same way the players and coaches did. That includes the writer Jack McCallum. Check out what he wrote in 2010 while Kobe was going for his 5th title. Quote, "Let me propose another simple but often overlooked reason that Kobe remains superior to LeBron. Kobe's a better basketball player, not a better athlete, which sometimes gets lost. A better basketball player. He dribbles better, passes better, he has more ways to score, and understands the game better. That is not to say that LeBron is inferior in any of those areas. He is great, but he's not as good as Bryant." End of quote. While LeBron was failing to reach the finals, Kobe was winning back-to-back titles. His skill, numbers, and team success were all that we needed to reach the logical conclusion that Kobe Bryant was easily the best player in the world. At the very least, this was a title that he owned from 2006 to 2010. That's a 5-year stretch, which is more than any other player in that decade. He owned the 2000s, not Shaq, not Duncan, and not LeBron. If you want to add more seasons to that list, then I don't blame you one bit. Which other seasons are you adding? Why do you think Kobe only won 1 MVP in his career? Or do you think all he deserved was 1? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.